About a year ago, I made a series of 3 videos in which we explored Luke 17, wherein Jesus predicts the chain of events that precede his second coming. In the 3rd video, I made a case for an alternate interpretation of Luke 17 and how it relates to the end times. This video is a shorter version, focused solely on my interpretation of Luke 17, what Jesus calls the days of the Son of Man. I have duplicated some of that other video here and added new information. Speaking of a future time when Jesus' followers will long for his return, Jesus says to his disciples,
"The days will come when you will long to see one of the days of the Son of Man, and you will not see it. They will say to you, 'Look there, look here.' Do not go away, and do not run after them. For just like the lightning, when it flashes out of one part of the sky, shines to the other part of the sky, so will the Son of Man be in his day. But first he must suffer many things and be rejected by this generation."
Jesus knows that after he is rejected by his own generation, after he dies, rises, and goes to sit at the right hand of the Father, his disciples will long to see the days of the Son of Man. He warns them against the temptation to believe rumors about his return, spread by those who claim to know his secret location, in quotes. Don't go running after them, he says. When he returns, it won't be a secret. His return will be as obvious as a lightning bolt streaking across the sky. Just as we don't need someone to tell us where to find the lightning, we won't need someone to tell us where to find Jesus. The Lord makes 2 references to the Son of Man in the passage we just read. I believe this appellation comes from Daniel, the 7th chapter, which refers to a moment in our future when the Ancient of Days will give the Son of Man an everlasting kingdom. Since the Father has appointed Jesus for that role, Jesus often refers to himself as the Son of Man, associating himself with the Daniel passage. He, Jesus, will be given an everlasting kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that age will be called the days of the Son of Man. During those days, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language will serve him.
"I kept looking in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven, one like a Son of Man was coming, and he came up to the Ancient of Days, and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom, that all the peoples, nations, and men of every language might serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which will not pass away, and his kingdom is one which will not be destroyed."
The disciples will long to see those days, just as all the disciples living down through history long to see them. Before that happens, however, a chain of events must take place just prior to his return, which Jesus briefly describes as the days of Noah.
"And just as it happened in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were being given in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them all. It was the same as happened in the days of Lot. They were eating, they were drinking, they were buying, they were selling, they were planting, they were building. But on the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. It will be just the same on the day that the Son of Man is revealed."
Some Bible students make hay with this passage, going to great lengths to speculate about what the days of Noah and Lot were like. Some even suggest that Jesus is predicting a time when the world will fall into darkness and unspeakable sin and depravity. While that might be true, that isn't his point. The Lord's focus is turned to the normalcy of everyday life. He lists unremarkable and routine activities for the most part, And the special activities such as giving and marriage are happy and joyous times, I would imagine. In other words, how do you define surprise? The worldwide flood was totally unpredictable, and even those who watched Noah build the ark remained incredulous since nothing like that had ever happened before. The correlation between Noah's flood, the destruction of Sodom, and the return of Jesus Christ is surprise and astonishment. In each of these situations, the event was totally unexpected, especially given that most people were living a routine and uneventful life. The return of Jesus will remain unanticipated all the way up to the very moment of his return, when he will come suddenly and without warning. In the passages that follow, I believe the Lord describes the same chain of events, but from two different standpoints. From the standpoint of the Jewish people living in Israel during that time, and also from the standpoint of the Jesus followers, wherever they might be located. First, he looks at the chain of events from the standpoint of the Jews living in Israel at that time.
On that day, the one who is on the housetop and whose goods are in the house must not go down to take them out. And likewise, the one who is in the field must not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever seeks to keep his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will preserve it.
If we compare this section with the subsequent section, we will see some striking differences, which I will point out in a minute. These differences lead me to conclude that the Lord is adopting two distinct points of view. In the text above, Jesus is concerned with those who must make a quick escape from town to a new location, just as Lot and his family were required to make a quick escape from their home, making a hasty journey to a new town nearby. Looking at the situation from the standpoint of those who must decide for themselves to leave, Jesus warns them not to hesitate. Those on the housetop must not go down to get a few things, and those in the field must not go back into the house for a few things. Why? Because just as it was in the case of Lot's wife, those who hesitate are lost.
I tell you, on that night there will be two in one bed. One will be taken, and the other will be left. There will be two women grinding at the same place. One will be taken, and the other will be left. Two men will be in the field. One will be taken, and the other will be left. And answering, they said to him, Where, Lord? And he said to them, Where the body is, there also the vultures will be gathered.
Here Jesus adopts a completely different standpoint. He examines the experience of some people who are not given a choice whether to stay or leave. One person in bed will be taken, another person at the mill will be taken. People aren't escaping in haste, they're being escorted away. In the first situation, the people must make a decision not to waste time in gathering possessions to keep. In the second situation, those who are taken are given no choice. As a Bible student studying end times prophecies, one of the hardest things to do is to work out a timeline that seems to make sense of all the data. You can find timeline images online which help Bible students to quickly visualize the sequence of events, giving us a larger context in which to understand various passages. What I am about to show on the screen represents a post-tribulation rapture, but please, if you take issue with the post-tribulation theory, I still think you would find the following information both interesting and helpful anyway. So please don't stop the video here. I dare say that you haven't heard anything like this before because I'm proposing a new way to look at the Olivet Discourse. I will argue that Jesus speaks about 3, not 2 different time periods, and actually 4 if we count his own present as the first one. 1. His present time, during which the disciples are to anticipate being taken before the authorities, etc. 2. The flight from Jerusalem before the beginning of the Jewish wars with the Romans, which I call Episode 1. 3. The rapture of the church, which I call episode 2, and 4, the flight from home to Jerusalem, which I call episode 3. At this point, I would like to share a couple of charts that I made that helped me. You should start charts of your own and modify them as you learn more. This chart on the screen gives us a structural framework on which to build our picture of the end times. Notice that the chart is very simple, nothing but a schematic outline. Much more detail could be added, and perhaps I will add it to it someday, but for now, I think a simple outline is easier to grasp quickly, so I'll just leave it for now. Here we show a timeline depicted as a solid line along the bottom, which begins with the cross of Christ at the left and continues into eternity to the right. The millennial period is shown as a green rectangle, which represents a 1,000-year period during which Christ co-rules with his followers over the earth. The rest of the chart intends to display 3 different times when the group of people take flight. On the left, we show a vertical line just after the cross labeled Flight from Jerusalem 70 AD, indicating a moment in history when some of the residents of Jerusalem fled the city in haste before the armies of Titus surrounded and laid siege to that city. After that, Jesus says there will be a great tribulation, which we have marked Great Tribulation period just above the line. Next, we have a vertical line just about in the middle, indicating the rapture of the church. Following that, we show a short duration of time during which those Hebrews who fear the Lord and hear the call will make the final pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem. 3 times during the year, ancient Hebrews made a pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem as commanded by the Torah in order to celebrate one of the 3 major festivals of Judaism: Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. I'm proposing that these celebrations served as a dry run for a more significant and important pilgrimage in Israel's future. More about this in subsequent videos. Finally, those Hebrews who have made the final pilgrimage to Jerusalem and under threat from the final beast must escape Jerusalem to the Mount of Olives, where they will meet Jesus face to face. This event takes place just before the millennial period, as indicated by the label Escape to the Mount of Olives. For many years, I thought Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 17, and Luke 21 were each giving more or less the same information about the same subjects and the same future events. I even figured out a way to harmonize them together. Now, after further study and examination, I have changed my mind. I believe that Luke 17 is mainly centered on our future, and in order to explain this better, I created the chart you see on the screen. Here we show 3 columns labeled Episode 1, Episode 2, and Episode 3, with a question mark after 3, since we are dealing with my proposed hypothesis. By the time we are finished, I hope to show that each one of these episodes is a different situation, which necessitates different actions to be taken. For each episode, the cautionary advice is different, and for each episode, the conditions by which to evaluate the situation is also different. Episode 1 is found in each one of the Synoptic Gospels at the beginning of the Olivet Discourse. For instance,
Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation, which was spoken of through Daniel the prophet, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those who were in Judea must flee to the mountains. Whoever is on the housetop must not go down to get the things out that are in his house. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak.
Jesus addresses the destruction of the temple, offering the signal event when the city will be in danger. I'm calling this event Episode 1. The situation is evident when the residents of Jerusalem see the abomination of desolation, abbreviated here as AOD, is found standing in the holy place. Under the category prudent action, we see 2 actions that Jesus recommends. Whoever's on the housetop must not go down to get the things that are in his house, and whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his cloak. Under cautionary advice, Jesus recommends that the residents of the city pray that their flight will not be in the winter or on the Sabbath. Under conditions, we have listed the circumstances affecting the way in which people will need to react with regard to their safety and well-being. Jesus' advice is predicated on the fact that those living in the city have the ability to act at one's own discretion. The AOD is the alarm or the signal when to leave. One is to leave in haste. Between the day Jesus presented the discourse to his disciples and the day Titus appeared in Judea, one has time to pray for better conditions. When the time comes, one must flee to the mountains. Episode 2 is the rapture of the church, which looks much different than Episode 1. First, let's take a look at the passage from Matthew 24 to see how similar it is with Luke 17.
But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but the Father alone. For the coming of the Son of Man will be just like the days of Noah. For as in those days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. And they did not understand until the flood came and took them all away. So will the coming of the Son of Man be. Then there will be 2 men in the field, one will be taken, and one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken, and one will be left.
Notice that the focus of the discourse has shifted away from the Great Tribulation and toward the coming of the Son of Man. And that phrase, Son of Man, has special meaning with regard to the coming of Jesus to receive an everlasting dominion. Since we know that an everlasting dominion was not given to Jesus during the first century, when the temple was destroyed, we see the center of focus move to the second advent. Luke 17 is primarily focused on the days of the Son of Man, and just as we might expect, that passage contains similar language. Luke 17 covers Episode 2 and Episode 3. Matthew 24 and Luke 17 share Episode 2 in common, but I propose that Episode 3, which is very similar to Episode 1, is uniquely different. Unlike Episode 1, which takes place during the Jewish-Roman Wars of 70 AD, Episode 2 takes place the day that the Son of Man is revealed. During that time period, sometime in our future, there will be 2 in one bed, one will be taken and the other will be left. There will be 2 women grinding at the same place, one will be taken and the other will be left. The only prudent action Jesus recommends is be on the alert at all times. In this case, there is very little, if anything, one can do with regard to their safety and well-being, other than to take Jesus' advice and be on the alert at all times. Beyond that, those who are taken and those who are left had no significant influence on the decision. The situation involves an involuntary removal of a sleeping man and a working woman. No conditions or state of affairs exist that requires quick, prompt action on their part. The day of departure is just like any other day. Jesus gives no warning sign or alarm that might benefit them. Episode 3 is similar to Episode 1, except, and this is very important, Episode 3 takes place the day that the Son of Man is revealed. As we have said, Episode 1 takes place during the Jewish-Roman Wars of 70 AD, which is already come and gone. The day that the Son of Man is revealed is still in our future, so Episode 3 must also still be in our future. Notice here in Luke 17, there is no mention of Jerusalem. On that day, the one who is on the housetop and whose goods are in the house must not go down to take them out. This will be good advice regardless of where the house is located. These houses aren't necessarily located in Jerusalem. They might also be located anywhere else in Israel. One house might be located in Tel Aviv, another in Haifa, another in Nazareth or Beersheba. The point is, no matter where your house is, you need to leave the area. The one who is in the field must not enter the house to grab a few things. Remember Lot's wife, Jesus says? The story of Lot's wife remains a cautionary tale about a woman who hesitated and lost her life. A time might come when we will be asked to give up everything save the shirt on our backs, and if that time should arrive, We must not follow her example. Lot's wife made the wrong choice. Don't make the same choice she did. Unlike episode 2, where the difference between the taken and the left is involuntary, here in episode 3, each person has the ability to act at one's own discretion. Each individual is required to weigh the relative value of things against one's own existence. The choice to leave is made during an existential crisis. Those who are not willing to abandon things will perish. This would be a good time to take my shot at the riddle of the body and the vultures. I believe Jesus is drawing a comparison between a time in Israel's future and carrion birds seen gathering around a dead body. At that time, Israel will be like a dead body, and her enemies will gather around her. Reference Ezekiel 37. This time period is mentioned by more than one prophet, but the most striking image comes from the book of Joel, chapter 3, where we hear God summon Israel's enemies to gather at the place symbolically called the Valley of Decision, where the Lord will judge them there. And the question to be decided is this: is Yahweh God Almighty or not? It is no coincidence that the vulture metaphor appears in the same context as the lightning metaphor. We are to understand, I think, that the gathering of Jesus' followers to meet the Lord in the air takes place concurrently with the gathering of Israel's enemies in the Valley of Decision. One takes place in the air, while the other takes place on the ground. Both take place at the same time, and both display the awesome power and glory of God. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, on the 9th of the month of Av, August 29, in AD 70, Jerusalem fell. The temple was burned, and the Jewish state collapsed, although the fortress of Masada was not conquered by the Roman general Flavius Silva until April 73. 40 years earlier, Jesus foretold this event, warning his followers to flee the city with great haste and escape to the mountains. This marks the beginning of a very lengthy time of tribulation, not only for the Jewish people, but for all those who call upon the name of the Lord. That was episode 1. Episode 2 is the harpazo, the taking of a great multitude which no one could count, from every nation and all tribes and peoples and tongues, to stand before the throne and before the Lamb of God in heaven. The great tribulation is over. The day of the Lord is about to begin. And finally, episode 3, still in our future, the Hebrew people will be called to make the final pilgrimage to the city of Jerusalem. Those who make the trip join with the rest of Israel in a time of prayer and fasting, pleading with God to save his people from their enemies, that they might serve him in peace, will survive the battle of Armageddon. Lord willing, we will explore episode 3 in further detail. For now, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful to your own studies. If you did, please click like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.